All right, we'll give people a minute, maybe 90 seconds to join. Not too much longer than that. Thanks to those of you who are hopping on right on time. All right, I see the attendee number clicking up, so I will go ahead and get started with a little introduction. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. My name is Rowan Walrath, and I am the editor of BostInno. For those of you who are not familiar with BostInno, we're a news and events platform dedicated to covering startups and innovation across Massachusetts. We're part of American Inno, which is a network of 14 markets and growing, so watch this space. And we work to catalyze innovation nationwide. Here at BostInno, we do that in a couple of ways. First and foremost is The Beat, your source for local innovation. It's a newsletter that I curate and write that goes out every weekday afternoon. And you should consider The Beat your one-stop shop for everything that's happening in the greater Boston startup scene. You can sign up for The Beat by going to BostInno.com, where you can also read our original coverage of newly launched startups, fundraising, issues in the ecosystem, and more. And we also try to connect and catalyze innovators through events like this one. Now, this is our latest virtual State of Innovation, the Double Shift, Parenting and Entrepreneurship in 2020, which we're putting on with WellNested. Today, we're going to explore what it's like to fundraise, build products and teams, and get a startup off the ground, all while expecting or raising a child. We'll also talk about how Boston's startup scene might better adapt to accommodate new parents. Now, before we dive into our panel discussion, I want to introduce today's moderator, Stephanie Rampello. Steph is the co-founder. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll give a little intro and then pass the baton to you. So, WellNested is a startup offering personalized postnatal care for the modern parent, with fast on-demand access to the best in-home or virtual lactation care and 24/7 text-based nursing support. Welcome, Steph.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate everyone joining today. I'm incredibly excited because we're exploring a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, which is how you can grow and start a business while also doing the same with your family. So I'm extremely excited to introduce to you all some tech entrepreneurs in Boston that are doing just that. So we're going to go around and have each one of you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your family, what your business is, and what stage your company is at. So Nick, could you get us started?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm Nick, and my family is myself, my wife of 6 years, and we have 2 young kids. Our oldest is a little over 3, and our son is about 14 months old. And we also have three animals, 2 cats and a dog. My current startup is actually my second. I joined about 6 months ago as CTO, a little bit about a year into the company's existence. And my focus is on the product and technology side. Aside from when we're fundraising, my typical day is pretty much coding all day. I guess briefly about what we do, the company's called Statera. And basically, we take the complex world of physician compensation and simplify it and show doctors what they're going to earn. If you're a sort of typical employee at a company, if it's you're an hourly wage earner or you're in sales, you know what you're going to earn, or you know what the levers that you have to control your paycheck. If you're a doctor at a modern hospital, you don't, and the hospital doesn't really have a good way to tell you what you're on track for. So we're solving that through automated dashboards.
Thanks, Nick. Assil?
Yes, hi, my name is Aceil Halaby, co-founder and COO at Bloomer Tech. And my company is developing medical grade sensors in an everyday bra to help accelerate inclusive research into women's cardiac health and advance personalized remote care practices. And so what my typical day looks like, we're still a small team. We just closed our seed round in February. We're a team of 6, so I do wear many hats. And right now I have Rami, my son, who is 2 years and 6 months, and I have one on the way. And it's just me and my husband at home.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Heather?
Hi, thanks for having me today. My company that I come from is Neurala. I founded it with my husband and another one of our colleagues out of Boston University about 14 years ago now. So we've been through a wild ride. We have about 40 people, and we build AI software that we're currently applying to industrial inspections to assist in sort of determining where there may be defective product on manufacturing lines. So it's a really fun space to be in. Since my husband and I founded the company together, there's obviously different caveats that maybe arise. It's almost truly a family-run company at this point. And we have 4 kids, so ages 9, 7, 3, and 18 months. The first 2 just started school yesterday, so I apologize if they come in here in tears.
No problem. And Suelin?
Hi, everyone. I apologize. I was a little bit late. My board meeting ran way over. But I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cake. We're the leading platform for helping people navigate mortality, to do end-of-life planning. We serve now 2 million people a month, and we have partnerships in healthcare and in financial services. I have 2 little girls, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And we're also very lucky we have an au pair who's awesome and lives with us.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so let's just jump right into it because we're going to hit up all those details. So to get started, let's talk about what are some of the toughest obstacles you had to address when you were thinking about starting and growing your family alongside starting and building your company.
I'll take that right off the bat. It's the risk thing for me really was I just wanted to make sure, since we're both eggs are in the basket, that that our risk is adequately weighed in terms of, you know, sort of sacrificing the family in terms of us starting a business together. So that's always been something we have to take care of first, to sort of make sure that when we're making decisions, that we're making decisions that are right for the company, and also addressing how they can affect our family. So risk balancing I think is really hard, actually.
Can you elaborate on that? Maybe give us an example of like what that looks like for your family?
For example, retirement funds, college funds, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, how do you balance that in a startup? You know, because when you found a startup, it's really about you're all in financially, and so you're basically betting the family on the success of your company. And at least in our case, because we're married, so it was a big decision for us to both be all in on the company, just in terms of creating that financially stable home.
Yeah, I'll piggyback a thought on that too, which is, you know, we're in a similar boat. We're privileged enough that my wife's actually able to be here full time with the kids, and also I actually sold my first company right before we decided to have kids, and so we're kind of lined up in this really nice situation where, you know, suddenly I had a real income and some stability to the job, and sort of that risk period had sort of just ended, and so it was a big decision for us to kind of jump back into the second startup, and we had to talk a lot about whether, you know, not saving for retirement, right? Like if that felt okay. It's a hard decision to make. It's a really tough one.
Okay, so what have you found to be helpful in managing family responsibilities when you also feel a lot of external pressure to kind of prioritize your startup in your life? How have you made decisions specifically around family support to ensure that you're prioritizing both things in your life?
Yeah, I can talk to that a little, because I think definitely the first thing I had to identify was that in decision making, a lot of it is how I came to the table. So my own attitude And I felt like I found out quickly that my attitude affected the mood of the room. So whether I was meeting with investors, that I was meeting with potential clients, or even women that we wanted to interview for the product, it's all about like how you make them feel and how they're reflecting that attitude and that mood. And so the first thing we identified is that a lot of times my insecurities about having a family and juggling the act in the background was all in my head. And what they were seeing was something totally different. And it was all about just asking the question like, hey, do you have kids? Or like, are you juggling an act similar to this one? And it often actually brought a new take on the conversation, like perfect icebreaker, nice introduction, and then you realize it was all in your head. Sometimes, of course, it's not always the case, right? But yeah, I think that was one of the most important things, to at least set that tone, get that expectation, understand the assumptions that we're maybe building, and then build them down back to the basics.
I think in my case, so we don't have any family in the area, so it's been bootstrapping. And you know, in the beginning, as many of us are also in our startups, I wanted to do everything. Quickly realized I couldn't, and so just, you know, finding good caregivers. I have a nanny, you know, babysitters, whatever you need to get the work done. The other thing is sort of creating priorities on both sides. Like, what's the most important thing with your family? What are those biggest priorities? What's the most important thing with the business? What's the biggest priority? So that, you know, when they do come head to head, that, you know, you can, you know, sort of more rationally sort of focus on the priorities of it rather than just the big picture.
Mm.
Yeah, my husband's also in a startup, but not in the same one. So it's a little bit of a different thing, I guess. But it is, I think the good thing about it is he definitely understands that there's sort of sometimes rhythms to startup life and work. Something that I have struggled with, even more so during this work from home period, is sort of taking CEO mode into parenting, which doesn't always work. And so, sometimes it works really well to get like school forms in and get the updated EpiPen and do all this stuff. And I'm like CEO mode, but then CEO mode with family time is like not great. So I was struggling a little bit with that as we work from home, but my CMO gave me the great advice. He also has a kid. And so he has a wind down transition routine that he does. So he suggested that to me, which I thought was great because, you know, I think for a lot of parents, you're going back and forth, you know, between like have lunch with your family and then go back to your laptop. And then it's really hard. Has been hard for me to make those mode switches.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the positive thing has been I get to have lunch with my family more than I ever have before.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
So that's a really interesting point. I'd love to like double click on that. So can you share a little bit about sort of how you've thought about parsing out responsibilities, family responsibilities with your partner, or how you've thought about structuring your day and sort of what you've learned as we've kind of navigated through 2020 and had such massive shifts in the way that we do work? Like, what have you found that works best for you?
I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of life admin when you have kids, right? And there's a lot of logistics that you have to navigate with other people that you have helping. So, yeah, we definitely have to constantly communicate about who's doing what. And I think, you know, we naturally split things up based on what we're good at. So he assembled the IKEA furniture and I take care of all the scheduling, you know. So. I don't know how other people split things up.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I would say that like clear communication and clear sort of understanding about what each other's, you know, we're talking about the partnership, each other's needs are, and like being really, you know, open about what your responsibilities are. I think if you sort of let those things go assumed or unsaid or undiscussed, that's when people get unhappy, right? And that's just general relationship advice, but you know, with the sort of extra pressure of having a startup around you, I think you really, really do need to be on like exactly the same page with your support network, with your partner.
Yeah.
And I'd say also to develop a support network outside of just your partners, making sure you have friends, family, therapists that you can talk to, because I mean, yeah, it's just crazy. At least it is for me right now.
Yeah, I know for sure if my mom didn't live nearby, we'd have figured out another solution, I imagine. But I like to say she basically keeps us sane. She'll take my my daughter, who's, as I said earlier, a little over 3, for a day on Saturday, and just having the baby and not the 3-year-old makes a huge difference. And she's starting to sleep over, which is great for her, I think, developmentally, and she's having fun, and my mom's having tons of fun. But it's really nice to have just that little extra bit of breathing room every once in a while.
So that's a really, go ahead, Assil.
Sorry, Steph, but I want to kind of like shift the paradigm, because I definitely think, take mine with a grain of salt, but like we're maybe the youngest company, so I don't have help, and it's just me and my husband at home. So I get some peace thinking that one day there will be a support network for babies that were raised in startup mode. Definitely, I had to bring my son into all panels and meetings, and so I've had to teach him time management like I had to teach myself to be able to cope with both at the same time. Like right now in COVID, my office is in the living room because my husband has to take the only office in the house. So technically he's with me all the time. And as he grows, you all know, like it gets more naggy and we need more playtime, more sophisticated playtime. So yeah, I just have to tell him, like, you can be in my meeting, but I won't be available until I'm done, right? And it just has to be a conversation or / negotiation every time. But yeah, I think take mine with a grain of salt, but I'll be speaking from that end, I guess, because it's
I'll say that.
Isn't it funny when they start to play? Like my daughter will say, "I have to take a phone call, so I'm gonna go." And then you're like, "Oh, I guess I say that a lot."
Yeah, the second I leave my chair, my son assumes my position and starts talking to my team. And it's not like he's using a language, he's just speaking gibberish, but still he's very, aware that it's his meeting time now, and we switch.
I will say that
So
my second child, she was born 2 weeks before our company entered Techstars. So she was kind of a Techstars baby. I brought her with me, pumping in, crazy rooms and having a little baby. Just, people would take her on walks when they would go get coffee, just kind of as an excuse to stretch their legs. But yeah, she's probably going to need therapy. She was playing with robots.
So you had mentioned that like your support network really needs to look different and sort of adapt to your changing situations. And we talked a little bit about it, but 2020 has absolutely been crazy for everybody. And I think parents are really feeling the absolute brunt of that experience. I would love to hear from any of you about how you've actually changed that support network, what you might have added, any services or support, or made changes to your life being closer to family, or whatever you've had to do to sort of make it work for you.
I don't think I've made enough changes yet. Going into the fall, we have a whole bunch of calendars now that we didn't have before, but we've talked about hiring somebody to help with like the remote learning, because, I have a nanny, but I have 4 children, and actually she just had a baby in April, so she brings her baby. So there's really 5 kids being cared for to doing remote learning. I think that the biggest thing to do is to not bottle it up, lean on your support for emotional support and practical support. And right now what we're doing is being open to change, and that change may need to be every day, every 2 weeks or whatever, but are the desks in the right space? We don't know. Are the babies needing to nap at a different time so the kids can get on their classes? We don't know yet. We're just kind of trying to be really open and empathetic to everybody in the process right now.
That's great.
Yeah, I can share. I have kind of an I think, unusual situation. Hopefully there'll be something interesting in it for somebody. I was kind of in this weird situation. As I said, I sold my last company. I was there for a few years, sort of post-transition, and I basically decided to take a 1-year hiatus, sort of left that company and went to, kind of search for my next thing, but also I wanted to be home for when my son was born. So I was actually home for the first 6 months before I started working again, and really was spending time with my daughter primarily, but, here full-time for the family. And so when COVID hit, I had really just joined Statera and just started getting involved, and, had slowly ramped up from, as I said, being home full-time to now working full-time. And so in a way, it actually ended up being a really great thing for us. I mean, obviously there's a lot of negative to it, but I sort of discovered that I could work from home. I sort of believed that, but I hadn't really lived it. I hadn't really tried it. And even with the kids running around, it works. Like, you can do it. My daughter's just old enough that she sort of respects. I've got the headphones on, and I'm not going to bother Dad too much. And so it ended up for us being a really great thing, because if there's a weird nap schedule misalignment, or a doctor's appointment, or my son wants to come sit on my lap, like, that can happen. I had initially been worried that now that I was going back to sort of working on something full-time and extra full-time because it's a startup, that I would really kind of go the opposite end of the spectrum, from spending all this time with my family to absolutely none whatsoever. And so it's actually, in a way, been a really great thing in that sense, at least.
That's great. And so just one note to the audience, I don't think I said this in the beginning, but if you have questions at any time, you can absolutely use the question submission panel in the corner to add those, and we'll integrate them into the conversation at the end. So piggybacking the importance of the family support, I want to hone in on the support network provided by fellow entrepreneurs and coworkers. So Suelin, you had mentioned a little bit about some great support hacks, so to speak, that you had gotten from your coworker. Who's been there to really help you through this period of time and prop you up when you were trying to balance that double shift? And would love to hear what they did.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been really nice. I feel like one positive from the pandemic, which I think it's good sometimes to think about what has been good, is that everyone on our team talks more about their personal life in a way. We're all seeing each other's houses, and even though probably half my team has kids, and a lot of them are have pets, and so we talk a lot about that pretty openly. And I felt really supported, talking to my coworker. We definitely were looking at the COVID data together. Can we use playgrounds? Having someone at work who can talk to you about those things was actually really nice, and maybe slightly different from maybe a more traditional workplace. And then I have, because now we can't really go to events and see each other. I think it's really nice as founders to go to events and see other founders and chit chat. And so I have had a couple calls now with CEOs who are either pregnant or moms, and just to catch up on various things. But it's been so nice, especially in the absence of events, to have that kind of catch up time, talk about what's going on in the company, how we're kind of maintaining morale during this time, how we're changing our business strategy, and how we communicate with our investors and boards and things like that. And also chat about our kids. Like, it's been really, really nice. So I think I actually made it a goal that I would try to have a conversation like that, like once every week or two, just catch up with someone, and because I'm not going to be able to see them at an event, which is what I used to do. Yeah.
I would say that from my perspective, I've always brought my kids to work with me to some degree, some more than others. So I'm actually kind of missing that. So number 3, she was in the office with us for about a year when she was first born, and kind of grew up. And we used to joke that her best friends are going to be engineers and nobody's going to know what she's talking about. So I do kind of miss having the kiddos sort of socialize actually with our team. Babies would be passed around at board meetings or, whatever. And we really tried to normalize family in the physical office. So I do kind of miss that.
Yeah, I'll put a quick plug. If people haven't read Let My People Go Surfing, that's a pretty good book by the founder of Patagonia, and the way he talks about how they integrated family into work was, I thought, really cool to read about.
Anything else, like any other ways you've gotten support from fellow entrepreneurs? Maybe Rocio?
Okay,
Go ahead, Nick.
go for it.
Okay, so since graduating from MIT, which is when I got pregnant, we worked in a co-working space, and I think it was super important, not just the founders who also like took turns with Rami, but also that the space itself had a nursing room. I breastfed Rami for 17 months, and I felt like it was because of the resources there. And besides that, besides kind of having a majority female kind of office space, which was, I think, just coincidence, it was very normal for all of us to talk about these things and, you know, be less embarrassed maybe than we normally would during, for example, fundraising, when you're seeing more men and they're asking why you're doing a bra for a medical device. The conversation. So yeah, things like that. I think, again, it was mostly psychology. I think what Heather's saying is awesome, because what you bring psychologically, those expectations, they become part of the culture and part of, again, how people, you know, reflect your same values. So it helps when other people talk about it and are comfortable with it.
Yeah.
You have to almost overshare, which was kind of what I did. So I would almost make it a point to always be like, I'm leaving early because, you know, my kid has a doctor's appointment. Like, just overshare the crap out of it so that it just seems normal. Just to show them that, you know, it is okay, or, you know, whatever it may be in your life. We used to joke that parenting young children is very similar to some of the schedules that some of our engineers kept, because they would like stay up all night for a new video game release, for example. And, you know, so they would want that flexibility as well. So it's not just about only families. It's lots of people, for their own personal reasons, desire flexibility in their jobs. Just for me, this is what it is. And for you, it might be something else, but that doesn't mean it's better or worse, or more or less valuable.
And I also, sorry, I just want to quickly mention the other side where, like, our mentality, because of being in startups, the hacking culture brought to the child raising style, if you will, was also equally important. So like, the more you share, it was like the more my team members wanted to invite their solutions to, like, something I was stuck with Rami. Like, he didn't want this toy, or he didn't eat. Like, everyone was hack ready.
I feel like every founder that has kids comes up with like 100 startup ideas for kid stuff.
So true.
That makes sense. So I want to just double click on a point that Aceil, that you had made around like how important it was to have the resources in your office to feel fully supported when you're raising Rami. I would love to hear from all of you what you believe should be happening more to support families in this current environment. Like, what can we expect of our peers, and what should we be offering for our own companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is flexibility, as Heather said, and I think it's not just parents who value that. So I think the way you make that work is really creating a culture of empowering your team members to be pretty autonomous, and it's a balance, you know. And I think but building a culture of that, I think makes everyone happier, and also, you know, makes people feel more fulfilled and also productive.
Mm-hmm. And I think management training also around sort of managing to goals and objectives rather than managing to time is really important as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, because definitely I think this is amplified by COVID, but because we're always on the screen the whole day, it should be about meeting the goals. So if we're not, if like we're 10 minutes into the meeting and I feel like we're not getting closer to that goal, end the meeting. We need to restructure before we meet again, because I have 100 things like waiting for this meeting to end. So yeah, time management becomes different.
Yeah. So I do want to shift gears a little bit to a topic that I know many people are curious about, and we haven't had an opportunity to really explore, which is what it looks like to pursue VC funding when you're really at a transitional point in growing your family, whether that means you're pregnant, planning to become pregnant, and what the perceptions or what impact that might have on your fundraising experience. So if you've had this experience, would love if you could share a little bit what that's been like and any advice you might have for somebody who is considering pursuing the same path, but is concerned about that for themselves.
We raised our A round when I guess we've raised a lot of money when I was pregnant. I've been pregnant a lot, but there's a few to stick out. So first was, I think it was my second pregnancy, 2013, when we got into Techstars. When we found out we were finalists, when we did our first Zoom call, I was like, make sure we keep the camera high. I don't want anybody to see my belly. I don't want that to be a deciding factor in whether we go forward. And then they're like, now we need an in-person call. And I was so nervous going over there. But at the time that I was in Techstars, Katie Ray was running it. And if any of you know her, she just really is about the people. And so extremely compassionate, and didn't have any on whether or not they chose us. So that was really great. And then I would say during the A round, I was pregnant again. And I guess I just didn't really talk about it much. And if it was brought up, then sure, but I just kept it, I was pretty early, so you couldn't really tell. And then I think it was after, we started working with our investor. He's like, oh yeah, you're pregnant. And I'm like, yep. And that was kind of it. But one thing that we did do while we were doing that A round was we were pretty mindful about the investors we chose, because we knew that we were a bit further along in our life journey with children and whatnot, that we wanted to make sure we had a bit of matching values when it came to choosing our lead investor for that round. And in fact, we did, so it was good.
Do you mind if I ask how you went about that vetting process, like how you might have poked and prodded to sort of get to that underlying sentiment?
It's just about getting to know them as much as it is about getting to know you, and sort of like, honing in on, what their values are. So like our lead investor is Paleon in Utah, and Ben Lambert is our key investor, and he has 4 children as well. So just having those, making those connections a little bit, kind of dig a little bit, just to make sure that family values are important as well, was really important to us. We were looking at some other firms as well that didn't have that same vibe. So we just wanted to keep that as a priority.
Suelin, do you have anything to share about your own experience? I feel bad to repeat, because I know that you're not
Oh no,
that.
yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely a factor, and it's definitely can be really challenging to raise money when you're pregnant. And I think what I tried to do was just to be really clear about my plan, and that I had childcare lined up, and I was, and who was going to, hold the ball while I was, maybe out for a little bit, and try to work around the uncertainty. And I think it's definitely hard, but it kind of like what Heather said, it does kind of force, you figure out who will support an entrepreneur who's also a parent pretty fast. So it does filter out things. I definitely, I remember talking to, I don't know if any of you know Bettina Hine about it, and she raised money a bunch of times when she was pregnant, and she had so much swagger, and she would just show her pregnant belly, and she said, I used it as a forcing function. This baby's coming out, so if you want to give me money, now's the time, and I wish I had that swagger. I did not, but I definitely thought of her as an inspiration, and I think, hopefully, as more women do it, it's less and less weird of a thing. And I've always said, if you want to support women founders, you kind of also have to support moms. Not a lot of women choose not to have kids or don't have kids for whatever reason, but a lot do. And I think it's often on investors' minds, whether you have kids or not. And so you kind of want to find the investors who think that those are compatible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oftentimes with investors, it's not just about compatibility in your business or the strategy of your business, but there's some degree of personal compatibility that just helps make things run a bit more smoothly in that relationship.
Absolutely. So now, Suelin, you planted the seed that many people get great ideas for businesses when they're growing and starting their family because of all of the problems they're seeing. And I totally believe that to be true. I would love to hear from you guys about, if you decide to move on to a venture beyond what you're working on today, what are the other problems you're excited about solving? What is the next one you would want to solve?
Can I just say, can someone just build a thing that has snacks in it, but the toddler has to like solve a puzzle in order, so it takes a lot of time to eat a bag of goldfish? I don't want to build it, but I will buy it.
I'm pretty sure they have that for pets. That's like
They
a very
do.
common pet toy.
They do. So
Yeah.
obviously they should have that for toddlers. Well, I think that what your company is solving, Stephanie, is amazing. I think that's a huge need. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's amazing what you guys are doing.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, this was, I just started my latest venture, so it's going to be a while before I'm thinking about the next thing. But before I joined, I was thinking about a lot of things. And I think maybe a related one is there used to be, when everybody used cloth diapers, before disposables kind of came in and were more convenient, there used to be diaper like cleaning services, and somebody would come to your house with a clean bundle of diapers and pick up your dirty ones and take them away. And that strikes me as something that somebody should bring back. I'm not saying I'm gonna do it, but I think it's a cool idea. I think it should exist. I think 20% of the American waste stream is diapers. That's atrocious. Like,
wow.
We're filling landfills with plastic and poop. Like it just doesn't make any sense. So I think if somebody made cloth diapers as convenient, or maybe even more convenient somehow as disposables, I think there's a real opportunity there.
I'll piggyback on the toilet training aspect of it, which is like the little potties are annoying, and then getting, my 3-year-old, she's struggling through that a little bit, but yeah, better ways to potty train.
Yeah, I'm in that process right now. Super painful.
I mean, she's past, but it's still just a pain, because then she'll go use the little potty, and then she doesn't tell you, and then go in the bathroom, you're like, oh my God, so yeah, there's just no good way.
Yeah, I would say maybe mine is dual language, because I'm trying to stick to Arabic, teach my son Arabic, and then he's hearing me speak English in all my meetings, and he's like, I know you speak English. So I'm losing the fight with daycare when he was going to daycare. So I'm wondering how I'm able to mitigate that. I'm sure there are a lot of solutions, but obviously I'm not dedicating time to it.
Okay, so one more question before we move to Q&A, and just a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions, please submit them in the GoToWebinar. So what's the best advice you've either received or that you would give to both a parent and an entrepreneur? And what would you tell someone who's considering that path but maybe has not felt confident yet in taking that leap?
I think the number one thing is to be unapologetic and adaptable. Things are constantly changing. What works when your baby is a baby versus your baby is in school is probably not the same thing. So just be open to that and don't apologize. This is your life, and keep an open mind.
Yeah. I think one difference I've noticed, because my first company, I was in my 20s when I built it, and now, I've got kids, very different part of my life, very different responsibilities and expectations. And, I think it's always true that in order to turn sort of a startup, an idea, into an actual business, that you need to be sort of laser focused on what's actually going to move the needle for you versus not. And with basically 2 more than full-time jobs, between being an entrepreneur and being a parent, you have to really take advantage of the time that you do have. You want to take the time to parent, because that's important for your life. That's why you chose to have kids. And you need to use the time that's left over, essentially, to do kind of the most effective thing you can do to move the needle on your business. It's really easy to get distracted. There's so many things that seem like they might help, or that somebody suggested, or whatever it is. And so you have to get really good at sort of sniffing out, I guess. I don't know, maybe there's a better way to put that, but finding the thing that you believe is is absolutely going to move your business forward. Even if you only have 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, instead of, the 20 hours a day that you might have in your 20s, like, you can do it. I'm not saying you can't do it with 6 hours a day, but you have to use that time even better than the person who's not also parenting.
Yeah, it's all about what you don't do.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think one really big parallel between parenting and running a company is all your issues become the issues in parenting and running a company. So I do think that knowing yourself really well is really important for both. And all your weaknesses perpetuate themselves, both in the next generation as well as in your company. So I just think it's really important just to have a lot of self-awareness in both.
Yeah, I would just add, because I think all of that was super important, is that mentors are very important, but when listening to mentors, don't compare, because it gets like a tricky balance. You want to learn from someone, but at the same time, you want to apply what works for you and for your company, which is, again, it's like building a new startup.
I mean, the other thing to think about is like a startup and raising children. Both of those things are super insane. You might as well just get it all over with at once, right? Just something to consider. Do it all at once.
Couldn't agree more. We actually, this might be one step too far, but my wife and I decided to also get a puppy around the same time. So I'll just go on mute now.
That's craziness.
It might be too much.
So now we can move to some questions from the audience. The first one is, have you thought of adding any special benefits related to childcare to your team, given the COVID and homeschooling realities? And if so, what does that look like for your company?
We've thought about it. It's been a challenge for implementing. Where we focused really on our benefits is making sure that we have really good health insurance and a lot of coverage on that, which really decreases a lot of stress we find for many of the families, as well as lots of flexibility in the day. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah.
Yeah, the main thing, I mean, we're still a pretty small team, so really case by case, but we definitely talked about, the online learning is not childcare, so flexibility during the day, exactly, same thing. There might be certain hours where one parent is on and can't take meetings, but I was very grateful for us to have an open conversation about it as a team, and we can all kind of figure out both people's natural rhythms of productivity and when they want to do meetings and things like that, as well as some of the constraints of having kids at home and working from home at the same time.
We also have a Slack channel for all of us navigating children during COVID, where we can kind of share tips or whatever, just to have that communication for us.
Yeah, all I can say is we aspire to, offer all the great benefits. Right now, it's just really us co-founders and one employee, and she doesn't have kids, so it's not a a reality that we have to contend with yet. But definitely, it was a core part. Amy, my co-founder, and I spent many hours talking to each other, making sure we were super values aligned before deciding to officially join forces. And like this, even before COVID, was definitely a consideration of how do we support families. I have small children right now. Amy, may or may not have kids at some point in the future, and she wants to be able to do that and not have the company sort of impede that. And we want to support our employees in it too, not have it be sort of like a privileged thing maybe that we can do, but they can't. And I, to be honest, I don't know exactly how to really deliver on that. We want to do it. We aspire to do it. We are lucky in a way that we don't have to, deliver on that right now, but we're still sort of navigating it, I guess.
So we do offer also 12 weeks parental leave, and that was a moment. It was like, put your money where your mouth is, right? Because it's like, I took that, now I've had many employees have babies, and I'm like, oh my god, you have that moment of freak out where you're like, we're a small team, we can't lose this person for 12 weeks, but you're like, yes we can. And I'm actually kind of proud to say that we do have one male engineer who's out on a full 12-week leave right now. Oftentimes they don't take the full amount, but he's out on 12 weeks and go for it, you know. I feel good about it, but in the beginning I was a little nervous.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm at that stage right now where everyone's looking to me to set the example. So it's making me nervous. So pending, we will let you know. But definitely in terms of just managing in home, like my husband knows that pitches, board meetings, like specific meetings, he has to give me the room, the office, the real office, and then take Rami, maybe even outside the house. And then we also alternate meal prep, and we alternate sleep time. It's just not working with my husband. I'm still responsible for sleep time. But yeah, it's a negotiation. And as he grows up and his needs change, it's always like this new conversation, new negotiation. So
that's awesome. And so Heather, I want to go back to a comment that you had made around the engineer in your team taking the full 12 weeks, because I think very often, you know, everyone looks up to understand the example and the cultural norm set by an organization, and sometimes you need to model the behavior that you want to see. And we know that there's a lot of research to show that men not taking parental leave disencourages other men to do the same. So have you found situations as of late where you've had to change your own behavior or do something specific to model the behavior that you want to allow and make acceptable for your own team?
Well, I think with my first, I took maybe 6 weeks, and, you know, I ended up having some postpartum depression. I mean, you know, it's a struggle when you first become a parent. And after that, I was like, I can't do that. That's insane, you know. And maybe I do a bit of like I did number 2 with Techstars, but for the last 2, I said, I'm taking my leave. It's important to me, and the business will survive. And, you know, I did that. And just being, you know, open about it and transparent. And, you know, one guy was funny. He's like, I'm only going to take 2 weeks, but don't tell my wife that you offer a full 12. It's just like, you know, he just, you know, he felt that he was better mentally if he could be working, you know, from home, but working. And, but, you know, other of the men, you know, like this guy, he's taking the full 12, and it just doesn't always happen with the men. I've seen it with the women. They always take the 12, but not the men.
Mm. Do you think there's an opportunity to like, how would you consider addressing that? Actually, I think that's a really important cultural difference between men and women.
Yeah, I think it's actually becoming more normal, and which is, this is the symptom of that. So when people are having babies, it seems like we have a lot of babies. That's, you know, what's happening. But when people are having babies, it's celebrated, and it's like, oh, so-and-so's on parental leave. He'll be back at this point, or she's, you know, she'll be back then. And it's just like a conversation. It's not a shocker anymore. It's like, all right, we can handle that.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, at our company, because we talk a lot about that life is finite, and so you have a finite amount of time in your life, so you want to spend your time in a way that is most meaningful to you. You never want to look back and wish you had spent more time with your family. And so we definitely try to set a culture of that, and wanting to support people, whether it's spending time with their kids or other things that they want to do, that that work is not your only part of who you are. And then I think the other part is on leave. It was tough for me. I think it was really tough to, I did not take much time, which I feel like was a terrible example. But I think one thing that I did do, which I hope I have talked to some of my team members about, is the opportunity that it's not all or nothing, right? You can ramp, you can do a little bit if you want to. And like for me, I did actually feel like I wanted to do some, you know, but I think because I like it, and because I liked using that part of my brain after, you know, whatever you do with a newborn all day, it was kind of like nice to use a different part of my brain. So what I have told team members who've asked about it is, you know, we have a 12-week policy, and then we also say that we can talk about whether or not you want to ease back in and ramp back in and start back part-time, and kind of have a blended approach. So that's another thing that we've talked about in our team.
I don't think I ever unplugged completely in those 12 weeks. I was always like, you know, there, but I just set the expectation with my team that making sure that they were empowered to make the decisions that they needed to make to do their business and not to wait on me because I am on leave, but I'm certainly available if we need to talk things through.
And so one question we have, I think, really speaks to, Suelin, what you had mentioned before, which is structuring a community around yourself so that you still felt like you were connected to others, like during this craziness of the time that we're living in right now, where in-person is so hard. So I'd love to hear from all of you what founder communities you've tapped into that you found really valuable, especially if they're female founder communities or something for people starting early stage ventures.
I don't think I've done enough of it, so anybody?
I didn't tap into communities necessarily. I think it's also different with first child versus second child, because first child, like Heather said, it's the biggest transition for a mom. You're adding this new role in your life, and just the psychological transition is huge. So you want someone who understands. And then by the second time, you're just like, okay, I have one more mouth to feed. but that first time, I quickly tried to find moms with kids the same age, because you want to learn, like, oh, I'm hitting a roadblock here. How did you get past it? And so because they're the same age, you're able to exchange notes and, move quickly. Because with newborns, every day counts, right? You're not measuring by weeks yet. You're just like, I need to get through this day. And so yeah, when kids are similar ages, it really helps for those parents to be like-minded.
And one thing that I did in the past, pre-pandemic, although it would be nice if I could do it again, was for founders that have kids, we have done a lot of playground meetups. So instead of, you might grab coffee with someone, in a business way, but we'd be like, okay, let's grab coffee and meet on the playground. Our kids can play, and then we can talk shop. And it's awesome. And so I've done that a bunch of times, and I think it's actually great and efficient and fun. And yeah. But I don't know, we haven't done that since the pandemic hit, so.
Oh, it's too bad.
I want to shout out to my investor, though, my lead investor. He was all for me inviting Rami to play with his kid. And so a lot of our meetings, we just, oh, perfect. Someone who understands is in the same zone.
Now, one of the questions is, if you had the luxury of timing when to have your child and get pregnant, in weighing that with when you'd want to go on the road fundraising for your startup, looking back, what would be the ideal mix of sort of planning for that family and planning for the fundraising?
I would go fundraising at the early stages of pregnancy after the morning sickness kind of subsides, because then you can still travel, and then you're really motivated to get the deal done so that you can then be at home when the baby comes. That would be my advice.
Impossible to plan is my advice. Not possible. That's my
Yeah.
In the spirit of impossible to plan, and I don't know if I have a horse in this particular race, but I would highly recommend selling a company, then having kids, and then starting another company. That's a good way to do it, if you can make that work. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd highly encourage someone to ask my husband this, because I don't know if I agree with Suelin exactly. I think my plan went a certain way, and if I wanted it a different way, I'd just have different problems. But I'd like to know how it went for my husband.
And now, I will say, for a lot of people who are maybe type A or whatever, I think it is actually can be frustrating how little control you have over timing of family for a lot of people. And so, yeah, I think it's just really hard to internalize how little control you actually have for a lot of us.
And that's throughout the entire, raising a child. You'd be surprised at how many times that you put the baby to sleep early because you have a really important meeting the next day. 4 o'clock in the morning, that same baby is barfing their brains out on top. I mean, it stretches your mind, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you want to have kids, you should make that decision and do it. And that is completely separate from everything else in your life. Like you're just going to have to deal with that, that decision.
Yeah. And so the last question I want to address today before we run out of time is a really, really important one. And I think we all struggle with this, which is how do you find time for yourself in some restorative way? Would love to hear from all of you about what has worked for you.
I lock myself in the bathroom.
I stay up too late and am super tired all the time. That's not a healthy answer, but it's the truth.
But if you lock yourself in a room, you have to make sure that the older kids don't figure out how to pick the lock, which is my new thing.
I put it in the I like put it in the calendar, even if it's like a 15-minute for meditation every day or whatever it is, because I live and die by my calendar. Otherwise, I will never do it.
Yeah, same. I have it in my calendar as well. And even if it's in 15-minute blocks that are a couple every day, and sometimes they get ignored by people's scheduled meetings in my calendar, but it's important. And then, yeah, why is the bathroom our sanctuary? It's like less room in the house where you find yourself alone.
I don't know how you do that because I get the knock, 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 knock on the door.
Oh, I turned the shower on so I can't hear it.
Oh, good set.
Yeah, we're not allowed to have closed doors on any of our bathrooms. It just doesn't work.
Oh, God.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your honesty and your realness today. I feel so grateful that we were able to have this discussion and get some time with all of you. To that end, I'm going to pass over to Rowan for some closing thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I loved that discussion. I had the privilege of live tweeting over in another tab while all of you were chatting. And I was laughing sometimes. And the little, you're on mute, nobody can hear you thing would come on. So that was kind of fun. But really, really appreciate all of your insights and super appreciate, of course, Steph and WellNested for helping us put this together and all of our audience members for tuning in. One more thing before we go ahead and end the webinar. One of the reasons that we at BostInno have been ramping up expansion lately is because we have learned that the more markets we're in, the better we can serve our local communities. So beyond telling great stories and hosting great events, we're also in the business of making connections. So if you know of a cool startup founder or investment firm or anybody we should be aware of in Boston or in any of our sister markets, please, please, please let us know. Because we want to continue catalyzing local innovation across the US. All right, thank you all so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.